we'll just be discussing with this week's event.
It's just here.
Yes, it just didn't be able to know exactly what they had to tell him. And I guess on that score, and then we had emailed a bit with Mr. Vogt yesterday. Take this up more when they're here. I think today may end up being shorter because Mr. Clem's absence, just the way that the business is structured. So we may end a bit early today, pick up tomorrow morning with our expert, Peter Hogan, and then do, depending on how things shake out time-wise today, we do 2 last deposition designations tomorrow, and then plan to move on to the afternoon.
So when you say early, you have a bullet to you, but you're not saying noon.
No, I think we'll definitely go past me. We have to finish Mr. Denton's testimony here this morning. We then have Mia Lady, who's in charge of that, so Gawker. Scott Kidder, who's the former CFO, COO of the company. And then we have a series of deposition designations that we need to take up, I think, some objections with Your Honor. We'll play those, but we had planned on having Mr. Clem and potentially another witness to explain some of his testimony. But since he won't be testifying, we probably won't call that other witness, which gives us a bit of a gap in our case.
So that was for tomorrow?
Well, we were potentially planning on using Mr. Clem this afternoon at this stage of the case. So then our expert will come in tomorrow morning, and we should be able to wrap up shortly before lunch.
Are there any objections that would be handled this morning?
Not without Mr. Vogt. I think.
It said at the most 10 minutes, so.
I'm sorry.
At the most 10 minutes.
Yeah, and may I approach for a moment?
And we still have some jurors that are missing. I'm just trying to figure out how we're going to utilize our time best, even when Mr. Vogt gets here. I'm not sure that all the jurors will be here.
Can I talk to you for a moment off the record?
That needs to be resolved sometime during the day. So maybe during lunch break we can figure that out. Anything else before we get started with the video of Mr. Denton? Nothing. That's okay. Let's go ahead. Mr. Denton. Yes, Mr. Denton, want to come back on that, please? joining us here on this day. So before we get started, would you please raise your right hand? You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Have each of you been able to follow my instructions over the course of the evening? That is not to talk to anybody about people or parties involved in this case, not to do your own research, including going on the internet, look anything up about the people or parties involved in this case, and not to read any of the news media that's being reported on this case. All right. Thank you all very much. So when we left, our case today, Mr. Benson was on the stand. We did the direct examination by Mr. Sullivan, and that's where we'll continue this morning. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Denton.
Good morning.
Let's start here. When Mr. Delario's October 4, 2012 post was published, did his story attract many readers?
It did, yes.
Okay. And I think we saw last week, based on some of the information that was displayed on some of those exhibits, that indeed it turned out to be one of the top stories of 2012.
Yes, it was, I think, in the top 3 stories by popularity that year.
Okay, all right. Now, so it's one of the top 3 stories. Did it bring significant revenue for Gawker Media?
No, it didn't.
And how can it be that a story that is one of the top 3 stories of the entire year does not result in significant revenue for your company?
3 main reasons. One is that it was a spike, so there was traffic to the story, but there was no sustained increase in audience. So people came, they looked at the story, maybe a few looked around a little bit, but we didn't gain any significant number of regular visitors. Secondly, the ad deals that we do are done in advance. And there's no spot market, there's no real-time market for advertising, and there was no advertising on the page itself.
All right. Based on your experience, you mentioned the fact that there are stories that spike. I take it that's kind of what we saw in those graphs last week.
That's right.
Big jump, and then it plummets back down. From experience, can you tell whether those spike people, those people that come all of a sudden, did they tend to return?
It depends on the story. A story like a few months later, we had a story about the mayor of Toronto. We exposed him as being a smoker of crack cocaine. And that story got a lot of media attention and I think did draw people into the site in a sustained way. This particular story did get a lot of attention. But I couldn't say that it gave us that big a sustained increase in audience.
All right. Now, what I'd like to do is talk about, I think it's it was Plaintiffs Exhibit 127 that came up a few times last week, and I'd like to take a look at that. If you could look there at the top, you'll see the second one down. There you go. You'll see there it is an email from you, all right, dated October 10, 2012.
Yes.
You see that? And it is sent to edit@gawker.com. Did you see that?
I do.
Okay. Now, who would receive that as part of the edit@gawker.com?
All the writers and editors of Gawker and the other properties would receive that email.
Okay, so they'd all get that email?
Yes.
All right. Now, what was your purpose in sending this email to all the writers and editors of Gawker.com as of October 10, 2012?
While Gawker.com had been enjoying some growth from about May or June that year, that the sites as a whole had not, and we had been concerned about that. But because of a series of stories around this time, we were seeing growth across many of the properties, many of the sites.
All right. So were you trying to motivate people, congratulate them that it looked like things were going in a better direction?
Yeah, to encourage them. Journalists are happy when their stories are read. They're less happy when they're not.
All right. True in many businesses, isn't it? Now, Kim, if we could go down in the document, and you will see there's a middle paragraph, and this was the focus of some discussion last week. And Kim, I think the left side is cut off a bit. There you go. All right. Now, I want to focus your attention on the beginning of that middle portion there. And it says, it begins, anyway, we waited and fused. We've had a great run of stories. Did you see that?
I do, yes.
Okay. And then it goes on, and it says, Gizmodo's iPhone coverage was exceptional. Gawker scored with royal breasts, and this month, Hulk sex. Jezebel turned the tables on Reddit's misogynist. A sports star came out for gay rights on Deadspin. And sites made powerful use of Kinja and their readers in developing collections, such as Jalopnik's Guide to the Coolest Car Factories and Kotaku's Survey of Sunsets in Video Games. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. Now, what were you talking about here with your writers and editorial staff?
I was pointing to stories which were standouts, either because they were popular or because they were just simply excellent.
Simply, pardon me?
Or just simply excellent.
Okay, I just couldn't hear.
Sorry.
Now, so the stories that you called out to your staff, these are not all about sex, are they?
No, they're not.
All right. And how did you choose them? It's kind of an assortment.
I looked at stories that had been popular. I looked at stories that I had liked personally, that people were talking about.
Okay. Now, the story on the second one there about, it says Gizmodo's iPhone coverage was exceptional. What was that about?
As far as I can recollect, the iPhone 5 had just come out, and it was a particularly excellent piece of engineering. Writer Sam Biddle called it an aluminium jewel. And for us, iPhone stories were a big deal. We made our name on Gizmodo, our gadget site, in 2010 with an early review of the iPhone 4, which had come out, which was probably the biggest story we had ever done on the site. And the iPhone 5, that one we received along with everybody else, or I think in fact maybe after everybody else, but our coverage was enthusiastic and I thought well judged.
Okay, all right. Well, let us focus now, let's move into the middle of that and focus on the passage from Plaintiffs Exhibit 127 that was featured last week. You see there it says Gawker scored with royal breasts and this month Hulk sex.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. And do you recall being asked about that specific passage in your deposition?
Vaguely, yes.
Okay. Do you recall that a portion of your videotape deposition was played here for the jurors last week?
Yes.
Okay. And what we'll do, to put this in context, let's take a look at the portion that was played last week. Kim, if you could play the first video clip that was displayed.
The sentence that I'm going to ask about reads, Gawker scored with royal breasts and paren this month, close paren, Hulk sex, period. You see that?
Yes.
What did you mean by using the word scored in that sentence?
That Gawker covers stories which attract a lot of attention and reader interest.
Okay. That was the portion that was played for the jury last week. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. And do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what I'd like to do is look at the clip
of your video deposition that includes your answers to the following questions, the counsel's follow-up questions to what we just looked at there. So Tim, if you could, and so we have it in full context, I'll play the portion that we just looked at, and then it will continue with the questions that came after. All right?
The sentence that I'm going to ask about reads, Gawker scored the Royal and paren this month, close paren, Hulk settings, period. See that?
Yes.
What did you mean by using the word scored in that sentence?
That Gawker covers stories which attract a lot of attention and for your interest.
Did you mean to convey that they also scored financially for Gawker?
No.
Did you know at the time to what extent any advertising revenues might have been attributed to the publication of either the Kate Middleton or Hogan stories?
Yes.
What did you know?
None.
When you say none, you were referring to the fact that both stories appeared on their respective web pages without any advertising.
That is the case, but above and beyond that, those stories in traffic terms, these are what were called spikes. And stories, typically in these two stories, won't take an exception, they don't come along in any predictable fashion, in any fashion that's subject to scheduling. And advertising deals are signed earlier with a longer lead time, and therefore the traffic that comes from stories like this, even if one was to have put advertising on it, would not have resulted in any increase in revenue.
Well, it is possible, is it not, for one to click from a page that contains no advertising to a page which does contain advertising
Yes.
on the Gawker sites, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And that click results in an impression being created
Yes.
for advertising purposes. And have you attempted to quantify to what extent those impressions clicked from the non-advertising site to a site that had advertised occurred?
I haven't done that precise calculation because I know what the answer would be, which is that, as I said, there are two factors here. One is that there is no advertising on these stories because advertisers don't want to be associated with those stories. And secondly, any spike in traffic is almost impossible. I think probably if you look at some of the press coverage, you'll see that this is a general phenomenon, one that we've talked about in the past, that any spike in traffic cannot be monetized, at least until very recently. I think this may change going forward, but certainly at the time of these stories, that traffic cannot be monetized because of advertiser lead times, and therefore even any spillover traffic, even though the spillover traffic is actually relatively negligible, any spillover traffic would not have had any commercial benefit.
All right. Now, that was from your deposition that was taken in October 2013, right?
Yes, it was.
All right. Tell me this. Do you still stand by the complete explanation that you provided there in your deposition?
Yes, I do.
All right. Now, as of October 2012, did Gawker Media have a way to monetize sudden surges in traffic?
No, it didn't.
Okay. All right. Now, people may reasonably ask themselves, well, if you're not making money off these stories, why publish a story that is not a moneymaker for Gawker?
Our editorial and our business operations are kind of run independently, and the purpose of our editorial is to do stories that people find interesting. And so a story like that is important in that it confirms our reputation for doing interesting stories and getting a little bit closer to the truth than a lot of people do.
All right. So I take it, at least in the judgment of the writers, the editors, and you ultimately as publisher, there is value when you're operating a news entity that does not immediately translate into dollars.
Yes, there is.
Is that fair to say?
It is.
All right. Now, you talked a little bit in that about these spikes and how in your experience and in your judgment, those spikes do not lead to some sustained increase in readership, right? Can you think of an example where you had a story that was very popular and it did lead to an increase, a sustained increase in readership? Can you provide us with an example where it came out otherwise?
The iPhone 4 scoop that Gizmodo had in 2010, I think definitely put Gizmodo on the map in a good way that was to the benefit of the brand. And as I mentioned, the story a few months later about Rob Ford, the mayor of Toronto, I think had a very positive effect on Gawker. And probably also within this time period, the story about Manti Te'o, the Notre Dame player, that Deadspin had, got a lot of very positive media attention and helped to reinforce the values of Deadspin.
All right. And I take it if we look at that, take that iPhone story about Gizmodo, that attracted people to the Gizmodo site who were very interested in the latest technology products. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And I think, picking up from what you explained to us earlier this morning, that these Apple products are something that a lot of readers are really interested in.
Yeah, the internet would stop when an Apple product came out, an Apple keynote or a scoop about an Apple product. It was pretty much the biggest kind of scoop that there was. Sorry, a scoop is like an exclusive.
Okay. 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 Let us now, what we're going to do is we're going to shift our focus and we're going to talk specifically about the publication of the October 4, 2012 post that Mr. Delario wrote.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have your mind focused on that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Now, did you personally play a role in the publication of that commentary?
No, I didn't.
All right. And did you see it before it ran?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Did you see the video excerpt before it ran?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Can you explain to the folks why it would be that you, as a publisher, did not see a story like that before it was posted on the site?
Our properties are editorially independent, and it's putting up a story is a question of editorial judgment. I was running 4 departments of Gawker, so basically the editorial and the 3 business departments. And my role in editorial was really to judge the performance of the editors-in-chief of the individual properties. So, if the story hadn't worked out, if it had proven to be false, which it didn't, then I would have taken action. But that wasn't the case.
Okay. So is the publisher sitting at the top of this whole publishing operation, I take it you would not be able, even if you wish, you would not be able to review every single piece that was going to be posted on your various sites?
It wouldn't have been appropriate and it wouldn't have been possible. I think at the time we were publishing of the order of 250 articles a day. So it wouldn't have been physically possible, even if it had been.
Even if you wish, the whole operation would grind to a halt.
Yes.
Right? I take it when you were in more traditional publishing, back when you were working at the Financial Times, to your knowledge, did the publisher of the Financial Times read every single piece that was published?
I didn't even know the publisher of the Financial Times when I was working there as a journalist. The publisher wouldn't have had anything to do with stories on a regular basis.
Okay, so you really can't speak to that?
To the involvement of the publisher, there was no involvement of the publisher in individual stories at the Financial Times.
Right, right. All right. Now, did you, as you sit here with us today, do you recall whether you talked to Mr. Delario at any point before the publication of the October 4 post?
I think, as I've said, my memory is pretty hazy of the circumstances around the story. I may have, but it's probably more likely that I spoke to him afterwards.
Okay. We saw some video, again, video deposition, where you mentioned a conversation that you may have had. As you sit here, can you be sure whether that was before or after the post?
No, I can't be sure.
Okay. All right. Now, to some who listen to this about how the publication occurred, how the business of Gawker works, how other publishers operate, to some it might sound that the publisher is rather disinterested, all right? And let's focus in on this particular story. So you didn't read it, he doesn't come to you beforehand, you don't clear it, he's the editor-in-chief and you trust with his judgment, right?
I do not object to the narrative of this statement's testimony also being narrative.
All right. Let's focus on this particular story. To some, it might sound that you are a disinterested publisher. Can you understand that?
I can understand that, yes.
Okay. And if you given an opportunity to explain to them, what would you say? What would you say to them?
I mean, I would say that the individual sites of Gawker are run by the editors-in-chief. I would evaluate their performance in its entirety, and I wouldn't involve myself typically in the editorial process around an individual story.
All right. Mr. Denton, how many journalists have you worked with in your 25-year career in publishing?
At the time of the publication of this piece, we had about 60 journalists at Gawker Media. Now we have of the order of 100. I would say probably 500 journalists over the course of my career.
All right. How would you say, in your judgment, Mr. Delario measures up to the other editors that you've worked with?
He's an exceptional writer. He's a great team leader. He is loyal and he inspires loyalty. He's also, as I think I've mentioned in his departing memo when he left Gawker, he can be infuriating. He's a talent. There's no other way to put it. A talent and a character.
All right. Was he good at motivating the people that worked under him?
Yes, he took a very good existing staff at Gawker.com and then hired additional people like K.D. Weaver and Nitzan Zimmerman. They loved working with him and for him, and he brought out the best in them.
Okay. Did he have a talent for figuring out what people's particular strengths and skills were?
Yes, he did.
Okay. And I take it you valued that skill?
Above all other skills, really.
Okay. Now, going back again to the October 4 post that brings us together, do you feel that Mr. Delario missed the mark with his commentary on the sex tape?
No, I don't. With the benefit of hindsight, when I have reread the article, I believe it stands up to the test of time.
All right. And what did you think that was being communicated there by that commentary? At least as you judged it.
I mean, just judging it as a reader and as a former working journalist, I mean, he clarified the situation and added new information about who the participants were on the evening in question. He made a contrast between an American icon and the man behind that American icon. And he made a more general and to some extent sort of self-critical or self-mocking point about the public obsession with celebrity sex tapes and his own interest in them as an extension.
All right. Now, in preparation for this trial, did you have an opportunity to review the video excerpt that was posted with the commentary?
Yes, I did.
All right. And were you comfortable with the video excerpt?
Yes, I was.
All right. In your editorial judgment, did you think the piece was appropriate for publication on the Gawker.com site?
Yes. There were passages that made me uncomfortable, but I think viewed as a whole, the piece was newsworthy. It was of interest to our readership. It advanced our understanding.
Okay. Let's get to one of the kind of the key issues that we're grappling with in this case. Why not? Okay. People sitting there trying to follow along with this ask themselves, well, why didn't you just tell your readers, hey, we got this video, right? Describe what was in the video, but why publish an excerpt from the video itself?
The internet, it's a multimedia environment. It's sort of a hybrid of television and print, and it's a mixture of words and pictures. So the pictures accompany the words, and the words accompany the pictures. And in order particularly to communicate to a younger audience, they expect that. They expect that there'll be illustration and accompanying video and proof, really, of what the writer's saying.
Let me come back to that in just a moment. But in your judgment as a publisher, is there power to an image that words cannot convey? Despite however good a writer you are, is there power to an image or a picture?
Well, and people say a picture is worth 1,000 words. I think in the TV business they talk about no picture, no story. So if you're trying to communicate, particularly to a modern audience, yes, I think that pictures or video are essential as an accompaniment to the words.
All right. In your career, back when you were actually a reporter out there on the scene, can you think of an example that encapsulated some moment, historic moment in time? Does one stick in your mind?
This was a very different kind of case, but in the fall of communism, the iconic image there was the fall of the wall, and so for all the words that were written around that, the image of people streaming through after the wall came down that's the thing that people remember. And during the revolution in Romania, there were similar cases.
All right. And when you refer to the wall coming down, I take it you're referring to the Berlin Wall?
Yes.
Okay. Now, coming closer to home, can you provide us with an example from one of Gawker's publications of some image that really kind of encapsulated or was important to the story?
For the story about Rob Ford, which came out a few months after the story about Hulk Hogan, there had been rumors floating around that the mayor of Toronto not only was a drinker, but was using drugs. But it was only when we published a photograph of him bracketed by some Somali drug dealers in Toronto that I think the reality of the situation hit home to people, and the story really connected and broke out.
All right. Now, you started to tell us a little about your readers at the Gawker, the various Gawker sites. And I want to talk to you about their expectations regarding publication of visual proof. But you could explain to folks what kind of, people talk about demographics. What is your audience? What are their ages? Primarily, obviously, you got people all over the world.
There's a big range, but it's primarily web savvy people who use the internet, people who grew up with the internet. Our largest concentration is amongst people of the age of urban professionals, age 25 to 34.
All right. Now, focusing on your audience, all right, are these people offended by seeing, as long as you have an advisory so it doesn't jump out at them, are these people offended when the teller of a story uses video or photographs or visual material?
Objection, speculation.
Let's do it a different way. To your knowledge, do the younger viewers expect to see supporting material if a publisher has supporting material?
Just objection, speculation.
Do you have information based on work you've done with your readers to answer that question without engaging in speculation?
Yes, the feedback that we get, I monitor Twitter and the comments on individual stories, and the feedback we get is usually, can be questioning of stories.
Objection, hearsay.
Pardon? Thank you, Your Honor.
People are skeptical. There's so much information out on the internet that they expect to see supporting documentation or imagery, and I wouldn't say that they're particularly easily shocked.
All right. You've been in the news business, we've established, for 25 years, right?
Yes.
Okay. Print publications, back when you were a journalist, you would have a document, like the stories you did on the banking and the mergers and acquisitions. You would have a document, you'd write about the document, right?
Yes.
Okay. You didn't have the ability then, I take it, to link to the document, right?
No, one could put an image up, but there was no way to actually provide all of the supporting documentation.
Right. Because back then, you had a printed paper that I would pick up off my student. No way to link to anything, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then the news business moves on, and now we are in the age of the internet, and we are able to link to such things, right?
Yes.
Okay. And based on the response you've gotten from reader comments and what have you, I take it your readers, is it fair to say they expect that?
Yes, people are doubtful until you show them. You can't just tell.
Right, right. It's like everybody now's from Missouri, right? Show me, the show me state. Right?
Well, there's a phrase in journalism, show, don't tell.
There you go. All right. Mr. Denton, let me ask you this. Do you think that the public's right to know is as important as a public figure's privacy?
I think it's a balance, but ultimately I think the public's right to know usually trumps the celebrity's privacy.
All right. do you think the public should know a great deal about public officials and public figures?
Yes, I do.
Do you believe, as the publisher of Gawker, do you believe that there are still too many stories out there that insiders, including journalists, keep within their elite circles?
I think it's a lot better now than it was. But yes, there are many stories that are untold or only partially told.
Okay. Do you believe that the distinction between insiders and the general public should be maintained?
I think it's impossible to maintain it in the internet age. If we don't write about something, a story will circulate on forums or such as Reddit and other places, without any ability to sift between all that information to identify what's true and what's not.
All right. In your experience as a publisher, are you aware of important stories that broke, some big story breaks, and then folks come to learn that was basically known by people, but no one pursued it? Have you experienced that?
Well, we had a case recently with Bill Cosby and the allegations that he had drugged women before having sex with them. And
let me ask you this. Did Gawker, or one of the Gawker properties, did it have any role in reporting on the Cosby story?
We didn't do...
Check relevance to the approach.
Thank you, Your Honor. Let me ask you one more thing before we wrap up. You were here yesterday, and you were here when Mr. Delario was questioned about his venture that he founded, the Ratter publication?
Yes.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Why did Gawker Media, why did it invest in Mr. Delario's startup named Ratter?
I believe that he was a talented editorial leader and had the potential to be an impresario of sorts. and I thought it would be a good investment.
Okay. It was your hope that it would, I take it, thrive?
Yes.
Okay. Did Mr. Delario, to your knowledge, get substantial investment from any savvy investors?
Yes, he also got investment from Mark Cuban, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks.
Okay. Mr. Denton, have you invested in the ventures, publishing ventures, of any other of your employees?
Yes, Lockhart Steele, who was editorial director at Gawker Media, had a property called Curbed, which was a real estate, Curbed, a real estate site, and we invested in that.
Okay. And was that site successful?
That was successful, yes.
And what became of it?
It was acquired by Vox Media, and we received a return on that investment.
So would you say you received a return? I take it came to a happy conclusion.
It did, yes.
Okay. Did your investment in Mr. Delario's venture have anything to do with this case?
No, it didn't.
Any whatsoever?
None.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Denton.
Good morning, Mr. Tuckow.
Let's start with this concept of whether you knew about the Hogan story and video before it was published. You told the jury, I think you told the jury earlier, that your recollection of your discussion with Mr. Delario was hazy, and it may have happened after the actual story was published, right?
I was aware of a story coming out. I'm not sure exactly how. Sorry.
But let's be very clear. You were aware before the story was published that it was being published, right?
I was aware that there was a story of Hulk Hogan to be published, yes.
Well, to be quite precise, the one thing you remember is that you advised Mr. Delario to consult with counsel, right?
I remember a few things, but I can't remember exactly when I spoke to Mr. Delario, whether it was before or after.
All right, now you remember, you've been in court the whole time, right?
I have, yes.
And you've seen numerous witnesses show their depositions to show them the testimony they gave under oath, sometimes on video, right?
Yes, I have.
You had your deposition taken, right?
I did.
You took an oath.
I did.
You're an intelligent man. You certainly know that oath bound you to tell the truth as much as the oath you took before this jury, this trial, right?
Yes, I do.
All right. If you could, John, over here, if I can approach Judge, I want to give the witness a copy of this deposition. I want you to cue up 100, that clip, and ask him a question before you play it. The other thing that I heard you talk to the jury about was this new term that they've heard, that you were a publisher, right? That's what Mr. Sullivan kept calling you, publisher, right?
That was the title that I used, yes.
Right, but in your capacity as president of Gawker, you spoke to A.J. Delario before he put that story out, didn't you, Mr. Denton?
I don't recollect whether I spoke to him before or after.
All right, cue the clip, John, 100, line 13 for your benefit, Mr. Denton.
Which page?
Supervisory role do you currently hold? Well, I'm president of Gawker Media. I appoint the editors of each site under our control, and I will terminate them. I determine the salary levels, the budget for the site.
And you were, in that capacity, made aware of the Hulk Hogan story, the sex tape story, before it was published, correct?
Yes.
Stop. Now, you were the president of Gawker Media and acting in that capacity when you heard of the Hulk Hogan story being published, right?
I was, yes.
And according to your deposition testimony, which you gave us under oath, that was before it was published, correct?
I believe I was aware that the story was coming, yes.
No, Mr. It doesn't work like that. Actually, what you said in your deposition was in response to the question.
Which page are we looking at?
Sure, page 100, we just saw it, line 22.
Let me just look.
I'm going to read your question and answer again without the video to make sure I'm reading it correctly and you follow it correctly. We're at line 13, okay? You there?
Page 100?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I am.
All right. Question. Did you anticipate, well, let me ask you this. With respect to Gawker.com, what supervisory role do you currently hold? This is in October of 2013, right?
That's right.
Your answer under oath. Well, I am the president of Gawker Media. I appoint the editors of each site under our control, and I would terminate them. I determine their salary levels, the budgets for the site. Question, and you were in that capacity made aware of the Hulk Hogan story, the sex tape story, before it was published, correct? Your answer, yes.
I said that, yes.
All right. And the one thing that you do remember telling Mr. Delaria is to go consult with counsel. Isn't that a fact?
No, actually what I said was that if I had spoken with Mr. Delaria before, what I would normally say was make sure you have a point, consult with counsel if you have any doubt, and don't be gratuitous in your use of the video material.
All right, we're clear now that that happened before the video was published, are we not?
No, we're not.
Okay, so we're still not clear on that. John, could you cue up 142, line 23, ready? Is it your testimony? No, just hold it. Is it your testimony?
Which page?
Yeah, page 142, line 23, Mr. Denny. Are you there?
Yes.
All right. And so we're clear. We just gone through your testimony. You just acknowledged before the jury that you spoke to Delaria before the tape was published, right?
No, I haven't.
So you were aware of the tape before it was published, right?
I was aware of the tape before it was published, yes.
All right. You don't remember how you became aware of it?
No, I don't.
But you do remember telling Mr. Delaria to go to counsel and consult with counsel?
No, actually what I said was that if I had spoken to him before, I would have told him my usual mantra in these cases.
Isn't it a fact that the only thing you remember is that you told him to consult with counsel?
No, it's not.
Okay, John, if you could, I'm going to go back again, and without going through the whole drill, you knew you were under oath when you made the following statement. In response to the following questions at your depot, John, can you just cue it?
With respect to Gawker.com, what supervisory
Wrong
role
one.
do you currently hold?
142. Your page 142.
Did you ask Mr. Delaria when you had your conversation with him about this to him whether he knew if the tape had been recorded with the permission of Hulk Hogan?
I advised them to consult with that counsel, and I don't remember anything on that.
That was your testimony on oath, wasn't it, Mr.
Yes, it
Denny?
was.
All right. Now, yesterday when Mr. Delaria was on the stand, we played some of his video demo, and I'm pretty sure the jury remembers that we played a lot of it, in which he was asked what counsel said to him. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And your attorneys objected and told him not to answer, right?
I believe so.
Now, I want to go back to some of your history because I think some of it may have been left out. You talked about the 8 sites that operate under the Gawker universe: Jalopnik, IO9, Kotaku, Jezebel, Gizmodo, Gawker. Do you remember describing those?
Yes, I did.
At one point in time, you also owned a site called Fleshbot, right?
Yes, I did.
It was a pornography site, wasn't it?
It was a review of web pornography, yes.
It carried adult content that was uncensored, did it not, Mr. Tenner?
We didn't produce any pornographic content, but yes, we linked and we excerpted pornographic content.
You sold that company in, what, February 2012?
Oh, we did, yes.
Right. So, what does that put, 8 months before the Hogan story was published?
That sounds about right, yes.
Was the Hogan story the first uncensored adult content that you carried on Gawker?
The two stories, the site and the story, are not related.
I didn't understand that. Would you say that again?
There's no relation between these two things.
That's not what I asked you. What I asked you was whether the Hulk Hogan sex tape was the first uncensored adult content you put up on Gawker.
I could not remember.
Well, let's take a look, John. Could you pull up 196? Now, this is a link on Gawker. You actually did this, right? In what was it, 2008?
I was editor of Gawker at the time. We were between editors, yes, and I wrote an excerpt and linked to the story.
I don't know if they can see it. Can the trick see it? Is that clear enough? Can you blow it up a little, John? Is there any way you can maybe blow up the big one a little? All right. Is that better? Okay. So you put up on February 20, 2008, the Safe for Work summary, okay, on Gawker, the screen cap of the Gene Simmons sex tape, right?
Yes, I did.
All right, and I assume you know because you did the story, but for everybody's benefit, Gene Simmons was the bass player for the rock band Kiss.
Yes, he was also a reality star. And
He had a reality show, right?
Gene Simmons, Family
Jewels, right? Okay. Aging rock star, right?
Yes.
And you put the Safe for Work summary on Gawker, right?
We did an excerpt, yes.
And then, if we look at the text, you wrote the full motion horror of the aging Kiss star encounter with a reluctant looking blonde is on a Fleshbot page 2 links away. Consider yourselves warned, right?
Yes, I wrote that.
All right. So, you don't carry the uncensored link on Gawker, right? We linked that up to Fleshbot, which at the time you wrote, right?
Yes, that's right.
All right. Another one, if you pull up 66. See, do that. Right here we got, this is 2009, you're still in Fleshbot at this point, right?
Yes, I did.
All right. All your McSteamy dreams come true. This relates to the Eric Dane, Rebecca Gayheart threesome tip, right?
Yes.
And for the jury's benefit, that's been thrown around a little bit, but they're actors, I don't know if they're A-list or B-list, and there was a sex tape out there. Right?
2 actors and a Hollywood madam, not actually engaged in sex, but I think doing drugs and naked in a hot tub.
All right, John, can you get the legend of how it shows Gawker? Okay, so this is on Gawker, right?
It appears to be yes.
And what you do is you tell the Gawker readers that Fleshbot, which you owned at that time, right?
Yes.
Has the uncensored version of the Eric Dane, Rebecca Gayheart tape, right?
Yes, that's what I wrote.
Okay.
Oh, that's what Gabriel Snyder wrote, so.
All right. You have no recollection between February of 2012 and October 4th, 2012 of publishing any Rebecca Gayheart, Eric Dane, or Gene Simmons, or other type of sex tape video content on Gawker up until the Hulk Hogan video, right?
Sex tapes were more common than in the past, but they weren't a daily event.
All I care about is whether you published one between February and October.
I couldn't tell you.
By the way, you mentioned yesterday that in your Silicon Valley days you sold some companies.
I had a company based in San Francisco and London, yes.
There was you were involved with Yazam, is that one of them?
I had a company which was sold to Yazam, an Israeli company, yes.
And Moreover stock. Moreover was another one, Moreover?
Yeah, Moreover was sold in 2005.
I remember you talking about that. What you didn't tell the jury was how much you made on those transactions.
I mean, I don't think I've talked about it today.
No, but you're going to talk about it now. You made $1 million on each of those transactions, right?
Under $1 million, yes.
Right at $1 million on both, you think, net, right?
I mean, I think the actual figure was under $1 million, but yes, I think I said around $1 million.
All right. I want to talk about your philosophy. You've talked a lot. One thing I found interesting was you actually talked to this jury about newsworthiness of this story, but you hadn't read it before it was published, right?
No, I'm giving you my view in retrospect.
You're giving me your view on the witness stand in a trial in which you're being sued for money, right?
That is the situation we're in, yes.
It is, but back in October of 2012, you hadn't watched it, right?
I'd seen screenshots, but I hadn't watched the video.
Well, you'd seen screenshots before it was published.
Sorry, no, after.
Okay. You didn't read it before it was published,
No,
right?
I didn't.
You read it like a week before your deposition, isn't that a fact?
I read the whole piece a week before the deposition, yes.
And so let's talk a little bit about, for lack of a better word, your philosophy, the world of Nick Dent and Gawker, at least how it was in 2012. One thing you said is that you think Gawker actually has higher standards than mainstream media. Is that true?
I think most of our stories turn out to be true, yes.
Man, but the words you use are mainstream, you said higher standards. You've actually said that before, have you not?
I believe that in certain respects, yes, we do have higher standards.
Let's, John, if you can pull up number 37, I'm sorry. Can you blow up the highlight there? This is an article in the Washington Post. I'll tell you what, John, if you could, kind of show the date up in the left-hand corner so the jury can see the date. There's the date there. All right, so this is a June 22nd, 2009 article in the Washington Post. You're quoted in this article. Blow that up a little more if you could, John. All right. You looking at that? Can you see it on your screen?
I did.
We don't seek to do good, says Denton, wearing a purplish shirt, jeans, and a beard that resembles a 3-day growth. We may inadvertently do good. We may inadvertently commit journalism. That is not the institutional intention. Did you make that statement to the Washington Post?
I did, yes.
Your test, for lack of a better word, the test you have told the world you applied, is it true and is it interesting? Is that a true statement?
Yes, I believe that.
I mean, you tweeted that out, right?
I say it repeatedly. That's probably the guiding principle of the company.
Is it true and is it interesting?
Yes.
Right? It's not, is it true, is it interesting, and comma, does it invade somebody's privacy?
No, it's, is it true, is it interesting, and check with legal.
Oh, check with legal's part of it?
That's the usual practice, yes.
Hey, do we have that 613, 15 sheet? I don't know these are. There we go. This is your Twitter account, right?
It is, yes.
The line, the test, the short story should be true and it should be interesting. Your statement, right?
Yes.
Not the story should be true, the story should be interesting, comma, dot, 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 and check with legal, right?
I didn't write that then, no.
But you just said it now.
I mean, that's the usual practice. When a story is controversial or could be called into question, the usual practice is to check with legal.
Right. You and I can agree that you have literally, in expressing your version of this true and interesting test, never said that.
What?
Other than today, at least.
No, I would say it internally all the time.
Internally. I'm talking about when you're Nick Denton out there in the public, right?
I think the distinguishing feature of us is that we focus on the core objectives of journalism, which is to get it right and to make a point.
No. We agreed a couple seconds ago that you made a statement that you may inadvertently commit journalism, right?
I was seeking not to hold ourselves up as being noble purveyors of the truth. We write stories that a lot of people think of as being controversial, and I didn't want to be too pompous.
When you talk about your competitors, the ones you look at are Twitter, Tumblr, and other information networks as being a larger threat to your existence than a direct competitor like BuzzFeed, right?
I think that's true for all media companies, yes.
But I'm asking you about Gawker.
Yes.
I mean, you made that specific statement with respect to Gawker, right?
Yes, I did.
And you would agree with me, on a bigger picture, your journalistic ethics are reflected in the organization, right?
I would, yes.
I mean, Mr. Denton, I think one thing we can probably agree on, whether I agree, the jury agrees, the judge agrees, or anybody in this courtroom agrees with how you do things. This was a company you founded, right?
It was, yes.
And when you say your journalistic ethics are reflected in the organization, that's the byproduct. You haven't built this according to your own ideals as tweaked over the years, right?
I'd say they've been pretty consistent, but yes.
Can you pull up, I want to talk to you now about your thoughts on privacy, all right?
Sure.
If you could pull up 115. This is an article, May 22nd, 2013. Gawker's Nick Denton explains why invasion of privacy is positive for society. You familiar with that article?
I'm familiar with that headline, and I'm familiar with the article, yes.
If you could take it to the second page, Mr. Daxton, and blow up the highlighted language. Okay. You're asked the question by this publication, which should be on the bottom. Can you see what publication this is, John?
It's the Hollywood Reporter.
There we go, Hollywood Reporter. Thanks, Mr. Denton. One of the legal issues that always coming up for Gawker again and again and again is privacy issues. Do you have a larger philosophy on privacy in this age? And your answer to the Hollywood Reporter in May of 2013 is that I think the world is coming around to our presumption on privacy, which is that when somebody becomes the publisher, as people do at quite a young age on Facebook, to the extent that they are published in their view, they become sort of a public figure, some sort of public figure. That blurs the line between public and private in a way that has never been done before. Then they ask you, Gawker has been accused of invading people's privacy on many occasions, from George Clooney complaining about Gawker stalker to the Hulk Hogan sex tape. Your answer, just once in a while, I think it's worthwhile to take stock and recognize that the supposed invasion of privacy has incredibly positive effects on society. That's your statement, right?
That's what I said in this interview, yes.
And when they talk about Gawker stalker, this was actually a service, I guess for lack of a better word, that you ran on Gawker, where you told people when they saw a celebrity to immediately put out where they were, right?
Newspapers run sightings, like a column like Page 6 will run sightings. The great novelty, it wasn't that much of a novelty, the great novelty was that we actually put those sightings on a map. I think
you got a lot of criticism for it, didn't you?
Yeah, I think it was a fun and harmless thing.
Fun if you weren't the person being followed, Mr. Depp.
I don't think there was any evidence, any case of anybody suffering any harm as a result of this.
There was a lot of cases of people saying they felt that they were endangered by virtue of the fact that you were encouraging people to tell the world where they were every second.
People are putting sightings up on Twitter, they're sending them into Page 6 of the New York Post. I don't think that we did anything different.
Well, I know you don't think you did anything different, but you'd agree with me that the stars you were following, the celebrities did, didn't they?
I think seeing it on a map may have seemed unusual, novel, and scary to people, but I don't believe there was ever any case of anyone being harmed.
Again, I'm not saying there was a case of people being harmed, but you're not going to deny that numerous celebrities were offended by this service you were providing.
I think celebrities are often offended by information getting out about them, yes.
Let's talk about this thing you said on the record. I think what you told the jury was something like the right to know. First you said it was a balancing test, and then you said something like the right to know is more important than the right to privacy. I don't know if you went that far, but do you remember that general statement you made on direct?
I think it's a balance, and one has to examine it on a case-by-case basis.
I want the court to excuse me and the jury to excuse me for the next statement I'm going to make, because I'm going to use a bad word. Could you put up number 30? Take me to the second page. Give me, John, if you could just highlight text. Give me a date on this first. It's a Playboy interview of LinkedIn. 2/21/14, so this is what, a couple years ago. Can you take that highlight there, Michelle? At some point in this trial, before the lunch break. Are we going to blow that up? All right. When Playboy asked you about privacy, kind of like I'm asking you now, they asked you, is it possible you set a lower value on privacy than most people do? Your response, I don't think people give a fuck, actually, right?
I'm sorry to have to repeat that word here in the court, but yes.
Come on, man, you knew you were getting interviewed. You knew they were going to publish it, right?
In Playboy magazine.
Sure, Playboy magazine. That's the media, right? Free information, all that stuff. You knew the word was going to come out, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
You're not really sorry that word's coming out again, are you? Are you really trying to tell us that?
I mean, I'm slightly embarrassed here in this court, but
Right. Because there's other people you have to talk to right now, right, Mr. Denton?
people who don't normally read Playboy, yes.
There was a moment when I thought some sex pictures of me were about to land. Someone claimed to have some and be marketing them. I even thought I knew where they'd come from. I lost a phone, but it turned out to be a hoax. Playboy asked me, you weren't freaked out? It would have been mortifying. But every infringement of privacy is sort of liberating. Afterward, you have less to lose. You're a freer person. Shouldn't we all want to own our own story? That was your comment to Playboy magazine, right?
I said that, yes.
You acknowledge you would have been mortified, right?
Absolutely.
And then you have this idea that when somebody gets private facts disclosed out to the rest of the world somehow, it's a liberating thing for them, right?
I think being our true selves, being open to our friends, our colleagues, our family, my personal view, and I'm absolutely at one end of the spectrum here, my personal view is that we're happier as a result. But I appreciate that not everybody shares my views.
Right. And that personal view is part of your journalistic ethos, your philosophy at Gawker, right?
I think we have to balance because we operate within a wider society.
Well, let's talk about another thing you've said. Bring me to the next clip in this, right? There's another one. Do you ever have misgivings, they ask you, about exposing people's private lives, their sex lives? And your answer was, if there's a gap between private behavior and your public status, that's what makes the story for us. To my mind, the only real modern sin is hypocrisy. You made that statement, right?
I think when there's a gap between people's public image and their private behavior, that tends to be interesting to people, yes.
And to show people that gap, what you have to do is you have to go into someone's private life, intrude in it, and show the rest of the world to exhibit this gap, don't you?
No, if the information comes out and there's a gap between their public persona and their private behavior that's leaked out, then we would at least consider doing a story.
You agreed on direct that this video that we're talking about, this trial, showed Hulk Hogan, who, I'm going to use your words because you said it showed him the man, not the iconic figure, right?
It showed the man behind the iconic figure,
Right.
yes.
The man, you've never met this guy till his trial, right?
No, I think few of us have known the man.
Your way of showing the world the man was to publish a secretly recorded sex tape of him in a friend's bedroom as a way of showing this gap between the public icon and the private man, right?
Our way of showing the man was to do a story about a highly unusual encounter.
That included this video I just talked about.
That included the video excerpts as part of the story, yes.
All right. You don't believe Mr. Bollea, known as Hulk Hogan, waived his privacy rights by being a public figure, do you?
I think celebrities have a smaller zone of privacy than private individuals.
Yeah, but you don't believe he waived his privacy, do you, just by being a celebrity?
I think by being a celebrity, you waive a certain amount of privacy, certainly when you leave the home.
You think celebrities waive all their privacy?
No, I don't.
In this idea of that zone, you yourself would be embarrassed by a live stream of sexual activity that occurs in the bedroom of your apartment, would you not?
Absolutely, I think all of us would be.
If someone obtained a clandestine sexually, a recording, a clandestine tape of you having sexual relations, you'd be embarrassed, would you not?
I think I just said that.
And with respect to that, there's very little difference between you and Mr. Bollea, is there?
Well, I don't talk about my sex life that much, but I do write or publish writing about other people's sex life, so I would guess it would be...
Well, there it is, though. You're talking about other people's... The only sin's hypocrisy, right?
That's right.
All right, so you're going to go give opinions about everybody else. Doesn't that make their sex life relevant?
It probably does make it relevant, yes.
And you had, if you could pull up number 9, and just give me the highlights, okay? I'll tell you what, hit the headline first. This is a little piece written in, I think, a thing called the Daily Intelligencer, if something actually exists called that. In 2012, Nick Denton, using his own love life to plug Hulk Hogan's sex tape. Take me to the highlight part, okay? This was an instance in which a rock was thrown through your window because of the relationship of someone you were with at the time, and they wrote a little piece on it, right?
The original piece was actually in page 6 of New York Post. This is actually a blog of New York Magazine. I don't agree with the headline.
I'm not asking whether you agree with it. I'm really concerned about the quote you gave them and whether that's your quote. After that Hulk Hogan sex tape on Gawker, I can hardly complain about intrusion into my private life.
I was making the point that that to the extent that I'm a public figure and to the extent that you write about public figures, that it would be hypocritical for me to complain about coverage of my own life.
You were making the point that after having intruded into this man's life, you could hardly complain about someone intruding into yours, right?
I was making the point that it would be hypocritical to do so.
And hypocrisy is the only sin, right?
It's the most important sin, I think, as far as modern journalism goes.
You got married, what, 2 years ago, year and a half?
I did.
At your wedding, you required your guests to put their cell phones in a basket or check them at the door, did you not?
Yes, I did.
The excuse you gave was that you wanted them to enjoy the full personal experience of your ceremony, right?
I think it's very distracting and it's really rather unpleasant if people are always there with phones and focusing on posting stuff up on Twitter and Instagram rather than enjoying the event.
Whoa. Your whole theory is that the free dissemination and exchange of information in society is liberating, is it not, Mr. Denton?
And actually, people did still take pictures at the event.
They did, but you had a policy, right? And this was told to all the guests before they come to your wedding not to have their cell phones.
We asked them, yes. We didn't sue people who broke the rules.
Of course you didn't sue people. I'm not implying you did. All right? I mean, the point being, you didn't want people there with their cell phones distracted with tweeting, taking pictures, and other things because you wanted them, at least according to what you said at the time, to enjoy the full experience, right?
Yes, that's absolutely true.
Yeah. Let's shift now. I want to talk about the finances of your company. Audience is the first measure that you look at when you invest in an entity to determine whether it is working or not. Is that true?
To determine whether the site is successful and whether it has growth prospects, yes, it's an important measure.
And as of at least the date of your depot, you used Quantcast. We've talked to Quantcast about audience measurement, right?
Yes, that's right.
You were using that at least in 2013, okay?
We still use it.
All right. So we're all kind of on the same page as it relates to measuring audience. You were here when Jeff Anderson testified, right?
He was the guy at the end of the day.
You've been here for like 3 weeks.
No, I'm sorry. I get a little confused about all the
names. You
names.
talked about damages. You talked about the money, and you talked about audience and brand.
Yeah, he was the one who talked about unique visitor multiples.
Correct. Okay. He used Quantcast, right?
He used Quantcast, yes.
All right. And in that same metric, and for the jury's benefit, a metric's a way of measuring things, analytical data, for lack of a better word, right?
Yes, it is.
All right. That same metric was being used when the Hulk Hogan story ran in October 12th, right?
It was, yes.
Unique visitors, we've heard this term a lot, right?
Yes.
Unique visitors for a site or for a month, that would help determine whether an advertiser includes you in a buy, would it not?
During the month of if there was a traffic spike, during the month, advertisers would see a site show up a little higher when they did a search for, say, the best technology sites or the best entertainment sites or the best gossip sites.
Let's try and be clear. The simple question I'm asking is when you go to an advertising buy, unique visitors is one of the metrics that help an advertiser determine whether to include you in that buy.
Unique visitors helps to put a site on the map, but advertisers buy according to the number of impressions that a site receives.
All right, I didn't really want to have to go through this, but if you could turn to your deposition at page 120, line 16.
120?
Yes. Are you there yet?
Actually, AJ Delaria, that's the answer?
Start at line 16. I want to go to the end of that answer to set up the next string of questions, okay?
So,
You see where it says, and when we're talking about traffic?
We're talking about reader interest, yes.
Yeah, okay. So let me ask you if I'm reading your sworn testimony correctly here. Mm-hmm. And when we're talking about traffic, we're talking about reader interest. Your answer is yes. So it's that was your answer. The question is yes, and you're explaining this actually to the lawyer. Your next statement is, so it's our proxy for reader interest. The lawyer says, sure. And success in delivering the real value that we have for readers. The question, and also is a metric that's used in terms of what revenues you derive from advertising. Your answer, not directly no. His question, but indirectly, your answer under oath, the unique visitors for a site for a month that would help to determine whether an advertiser includes you in a buy, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about a term we've thrown around, or at least with you before, this term of traffic whoring. Are you familiar with that, traffic whoring?
Yes, it's a derogatory term for a story which is designed only to get to be popular and has no other real value.
Right, in the world of journalism, this is something that's gratuitous, it's a cheap story that seeks only to provoke without truly informing, to use your words, right?
Yeah, sometimes I would call it empty calories.
Empty calories, right?
That's right.
The Twinkie of journalism, right?
Cat videos and the like.
Okay. Advertising rates are set by Gawker based upon traffic, are they not?
They're set based on impressions or page views.
They're not set based upon traffic?
They're not set by in relation to unique visitors. Unique visitors help to put a site on the map, but advertisers buy according to page views or impressions.
All right. That's a form of traffic, is it not?
Both of them are forms of traffic, yes.
And yesterday in Direct, I don't know if the jury remembers this because it was a long day, you actually said, and I don't have the exact words, but the words were to the effect that page views and unique visitors are not that different, or words to that effect.
They often go hand in hand, but for instance, with a slideshow, you can have a lot of page views and not many unique visitors. And with a spike story, you can get a temporary increase in both page views and unique visitors, but it isn't sustained.
I don't remember, but I can promise you this. Your testimony yesterday was transcribed, but I think what you said yesterday was page views and unique visitors go hand in hand, or something like that.
They can often go hand in hand, yes.
All right. Let's take a look. We're going to look at number 81, if we could. We've seen this a lot, right? This is the republication of parts of the memo you did, right?
It is, yes.
All right. And just to reaffirm, we all know that some page views are worth more than others. You wrote that, did you not?
Yes, I did.
And then you gave a couple of examples. Think of an exclusive, such as the embassy hazing pics, the Deadspin expose, ESPN's horndoggery, etc., right?
Yeah, a great story which brings new people in, and if those new people stick around, that's worth more than a slideshow.
John, if you can pull up number 59. Go to the second page. I'll tell you, let's show Mr. Denton what this is first. Let's get it dated. This is the Business Insider on April 8, 2010. Do you remember this?
I was refreshed. My memory was refreshed, yes.
All right, go to page 2. This is another. What happens at Gawker is your memos, like some of your internal documents, get released out in the world, right?
Almost all of them do, yes.
And then they get reprinted in like other papers or other online services, etc., right?
Yes, there's an expectation that pretty much most internal communications will get out.
And that may help the jury understand why we're constantly showing them articles from other online services that have your content in them, right?
I guess so.
All right, so you gave a little bullet point list of things. This was a memo you wrote to your editorial staff, right?
Can we go to the top
Yeah,
of
John,
it?
go to the top if you could, just like before all that stuff happens.
Yes, I presume that was to the editorial staff.
Let's go to point 1. Scandal settles. Deadspin's outrageous tiger text and Gawker's peaches picks both hit the top 10, and Kotaku's knife attack story was pretty dramatic. The staples of old yellow journalism are the staples of the new yellow journalism. Sex, crime, and even better, sex crime. You wrote that, right?
Yes, I think that's a pretty much received wisdom.
Go to number 4, the bullet point down there. What you were also telling your editorial staff, and this is in 2010, most of your writers, but images can't be afterthought. Of the top 10 stories, 5 were photo-driven, and another 2 were based on video clips. If you can get an image or a document to support a story, or even make the story support the image, make the story support the image, the package has way more chance. You wrote that, did you not?
Yes, as we've discussed.
Pictures worth 1,000 words is what you said on the record.
Words and pictures go hand in hand.
By the way, you weren't trying to compare for this jury the importance of this sex video you put up to the fall of Berlin Wall, were you?
No, I think I said that they were very different stories.
Yeah, very different.
Yes, very different.
Right. You like stories that increase your brand profile, don't you?
If they increase the brand profile in a positive way, yes.
All right. Manti Te'o, that was a linebacker at Notre Dame who contrived the existence of a girlfriend, right?
A story which ESPN and Sports Illustrated picked up and took as true.
Everybody covered that story.
Sorry?
It was national news everywhere, was it not?
It was national news before, when it was a hoax and people didn't know, and it was even bigger news when Deadspin revealed that it was a hoax.
I want the jury to be very clear when we talk about this Gizmodo iPhone 4 scoop, I think you called it. What happened there was an unfortunate Apple employee left a prototype of the iPhone 4 in a bar. It was stolen and sold to Gizmodo for $5,000, right?
We got sight of it, and we paid money for the sight of it. It was returned to Apple.
We got sight of it. These guys boosted the thing and sold it to you for $5,000, right?
It was left in a bar.
I understand it was left in a bar. The point is, when you got it, you knew it wasn't theirs, did you not?
We returned it to Apple.
Right, after Gizmodo wrote this gigantic article exposing all of the things that Apple normally does in its launch, right?
Yeah, we don't play the usual games with PRs and publicists and Apple PRs. So yes, we're dependent on leaked information. The story about the Microsoft tablet was another example of that, of leaked information that got to us.
Man, at the end of the day, what you did in that story, to the extent you're calling it a scoop, was wrote an article about stolen property.
You could see it that way. I don't.
Just did. Can you pull up 448? This is a post you sent out 6 days after you published the Hulk Hogan sex video, right? Or a tweet, that's what they call this thing. A tweet, right?
That's right.
Crazy. Last month, Gawker.com has had its two biggest ever days, each with 1 million people from the U.S. alone. And you sent out a graph, right? Can you hit the graph, John? Is that part of it? All right. Go to the end of the graph there. What is that? People? I don't know what you're going to do, John. Let's see that part right there. There we go. October 5th, the day after you published the sex video of my client, you spiked, right?
Yes, it's the largest of the spikes on that chart.
Right. Now your baseline's up here right now. And you're tweeting to everybody who follows you, which is like what, 37,000 people, something like that?
I can't remember how much it was at the time.
You want them all to know how great the traffic is on Gawker the day after you put this gentleman's private video up there, right?
Traffic, like circulation for newspapers or like ratings for TV, is an important measure of our success, yes.
Yes, it is, Mr. Bennett. And the other day you were talking about was the Kate Middleton shot, right? That was the other heaviest day, right? Two best days of the year, right?
Stories involving sex often popular, yes.
John, if you could put up number 61. This was sent, I'll give you the date, John, if you could. Somewhere on there, I think it's 10/1/13. There you go, right there. See that? All right, so now we're going to frame a 12-month period from October 1st, 2012, which is 3 days before you published the Hogan video, to another year. And again, we've got inside this little period of time you're framing for your loyal Twitter followers, damn, just shy of 100 million uniques worldwide for September. Still, Gawker media audience up 38% in the last 12 months, right?
Yes, I think most of that growth came from other properties than Gawker.com.
Graph me, John. Pull that graph up. There we go. Do we have dates on the bottom of this or not? No, we just got followers. Okay. That tracks all your uniques, so forth, and you're sending this out to your people, right?
That's right, yes.
There's a lot of these tweets, but the truth of the matter is, even on March 1st, I think, if you could pull it up, number 619. All right, hit the language on the bottom, John, if you can catch a date for me, it'd be nice. Stats, after Gawker Properties live on Facebook, instant articles, U.S. unique viewers up to 4.7 million from earlier norm of 4 million, right?
Yes, that was a reference to the daily audience, so a daily audience of over 4 million. Traffic is highly dependent on refers from Facebook.
Yeah. My point is, on March 1st, on the eve of this trial starting, you're tweeting to your people about your traffic patterns, aren't you?
Absolutely, and I'll probably continue afterwards too.
Pull up 127. We've seen this a lot. This is the October 10th, 2012 memo you wrote to, I think you're editorial, right? The email?
To edit at Gawker.com, yes, that's a group email.
Right. Is that's like when you send it to all your editorial people, that's what it says, edit, that's like a group?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So the great thing about journalism, news always comes along. It seemed for 5 long months the rule had been suspended. So, using the date of that means going back 5 months, there hadn't been a lot of news, right?
No, I think Gawker.com had been doing well, but based on a lot of smaller stories.
really, because it seems to me just a little coincidental, and I'm just kind of spitballing here, but if you go down, you talk about the two, you went through all these examples, right? And you said Gizmodo did this, and Deadspin did that, and Kinji did this. And when you talk about Gawker, what you talk about is Hulk and Kate Middleton, right?
In this period, yes, those were the standout stories on Gawker.
Gawker was doing well all along, but you're going to, for your editorial staff, emphasize those two stories, both of which ran within what? 30 days of that email?
I think we saw a chart earlier on which showed that the growth on Gawker.com had started back in May or June.
That's not what I asked you. What I asked you was when you chose to write your editorial staff about how news was dead and the news got good again, the examples you used for Gawker were royal breast and Hulk sex, right?
In this month, yes.
On that day, October 10th, 2012, right?
Yes.
All right. And this wasn't referring to 1 month. This was referring to 5 months, was it not, Mr. Denton?
No, it wasn't. It was
It
referring.
wasn't. So let's just take a look at that. It seemed for 5 long months that rule had been suspended. And the rule you're referring to is news always comes along, right?
All of the stories that I mentioned in this memo were from that month or the previous month.
That's not what I asked you again. You wrote this. I didn't write it. You used 5 long months, did you not?
I said there had been a dearth of news in the previous months.
You didn't use the word previous. You used 5 long months. I mean, do we have to fight about that?
No, we don't.
All right. So I want to shift now. I want to talk about AJ a little bit.
Sure.
Hulk Hogan video is published on October 4, 2012, right?
That's right.
AJ takes a sabbatical in November 2012, does he not?
Yes, he did.
All right. The lawsuit that we're here for was filed on October 15, 2012, right?
Yes.
He comes back, and then, according to AJ, resigns voluntarily in January of 2013, right?
Yes, I was very annoyed.
All right. I don't want to really get into the various things you called him, but you described him on the stand today as a great leader or a brilliant manager or something like that.
We can call up the memo if you like.
We're going to call it his departure memo. We are, but the truth of the matter is, you think very highly of him as an editor, do you not?
Yes, I think he's extremely talented and also infuriating.
Charming, right?
Charming.
Charismatic, right?
Yes, he was a leader of men.
You used the word buccaneering to describe him, which I didn't know until you defined it in your depo, right?
Yes.
Okay. Pull up the memo, if we could, number 138, John. Another thing you've said about him, and I think you said in this memo, is that he breaks all the rules of orthodox management, right?
Yes, that's right.
But has still been the most successful editor of Gawker.com, right?
I think he was, to some extent, successful because he broke some of the usual rules.
Broke the rules.
He was not like the manager of a bank, no.
No, he was a rule breaker, wasn't he?
He was a buccaneering person who was great at motivating people and great at getting out the best in them.
He leaves and starts his site called Ratter, right?
Later, yes.
All right. Ratter is going to be kind of like a Gawker-esque type site, at least in concept.
I think the idea was that there is following from that story of the mayor of Toronto, that there is a Rob Ford in every city in America. And the idea was that those stories were not being covered by local newspapers.
It's not running anymore, is it?
No, I don't think it is.
It's been shut down, hasn't it?
You'd have to ask him specifically, but
But you know it's not running. You just said, I don't think it is.
I don't think it is.
Yeah, right. He raised, I think you were in here when AJ testified, $1.1 million or something like that to start Ratter.
That's right.
You paid him half of that, $500,000.
About
right?
that, yes.
And that had nothing to do with this lawsuit, did it?
Absolutely nothing.
It didn't have anything to do with him getting on the stand and saying he didn't talk to you about the Hogan video,
No.
right? That investment, by the way, I think you talked about how you try to analyze investments. That was a bad investment, wasn't it?
It was a bad investment, yes.
From the standpoint of Ratter running.
Sorry?
From the standpoint of Ratter making you any money, right?
Yes, I doubt we'll see any return from that investment.
You give your editors pretty broad guidelines on what they can do, right?
True and interesting, yes.
Well, no. You give them large discretions over the stories that they can run, at least you usually have, right?
Yes, that's right.
One other thing that you remembered, if we can accept that you talked to AJ before the Hulk Hogan video was published, was that he was excited, right?
As I said before, I can't remember when I spoke to AJ, but yes, when I did speak to AJ, he was excited about this story.
Did you ever go into your staff and tell them words to the effect that you may get sued for posting that, but with all the media attention and traffic it will generate, you were willing to risk it?
No, I don't believe I would ever say something like that.
I want to talk about the content of the video with you. We talked about when you had actually seen it. Words that you used to describe it were perfectly judged, human, and humanizing. That's what you used to describe the narrative part of this, right?
I thought that it was actually a relatively gentle piece under the circumstances.
Well, you used those exact words, though, didn't you?
Yeah, human and humanizing.
Human and humanizing. You also called it sweet, as in sympathetic, have you not?
I think at the end where AJ writes that even Hulk needs to be told that he's handsome sometimes, I thought that actually had a touch of sweetness to it, yes.
Listen, without getting into it, your exact words on that topic were that you thought the tone of the text of the article written by AJ Delario was sweet, as in sympathetic, right?
I was referring to that last part, yeah.
That's not what you said, though. I mean, do I have to pull your depo out?
No, we don't.
Okay. So let's pull it up and let's talk about this sweet, sympathetic, humanizing article that you saw. John, get me to some of the more humanizing parts on the second page. Blow that up as big as you can. I want you to read that to the jury. Use your most humanizing tone, Mr. Dan.
Would you like me to read the whole paragraph?
Yes, I would.
He stands on the side of the bed, and the woman scoots up from the pillows and resumes giving the former WWE heavyweight champion of the universe a blowjob. It is a slow, dutiful blowjob, and Hulk is thrusting himself into her mouth to speed up the process. This goes on for a few minutes, and at one point, Hulk examines the canopy bed curtains in a way that suggests he'd like to purchase this particular style for his own canopy bed someday. She takes a break, she spits loudly. She resumes for a few seconds, but it appears the spit has worked because Hulk mutters something in a growly sex voice. The woman removes him from her mouth and spins around on the bed like an excited puppy. She stands. They grope each other and stare at each other. "What did you say?" she asks, laughing and tying up her hair in a ponytail. Then they both laugh because there was a miscommunication during the sex act and they don't want to feel awkward.
John, pull up the next paragraph. Read the next sweet, sympathetic paragraph, starting with "You got a rubber," Mr. Dan.
"You got a rubber? I want you to climb on top of me," Hulk repeats, but not as sexy as it was the first time, which she didn't hear. Yes, she does have a rubber. But then we watch Hulk stand up and clumsily attempt to roll a condom onto his erect penis, which, even if it has been ravaged by steroids and middle age, still appears to be the size of a thermos you'd find in a child's lunchbox. Hulk hurls his massive body onto the canopy bed, and the woman climbs on top, finally, and they begin. There is lots of squealing and moaning from her, and she says stuff like, "I want to make you come," and "Your dick feels so good inside me," that sort of thing. There is a light spanking from Hulk, done to show he supports her efforts and is close to orgasming.
Go down a couple paragraphs. I want you to read one more. Go down to the one where it says "she does so" and then peels off the rubber. Read that for the jury.
She does so and then peels off the rubber from his penis and carries it away. She holds the condom full of Hulk jizz like it's a random dirty sock she found in the dryer. Hulk is still coming down from his orgasm and is making quick, loud Tony Soprano wheezes.
Now, John, that's enough. The story says NSFW because the reader would be watching a pornographic video in an office environment, right?
Yes, that's right.
You think Delario was being funny by telling readers to watch it anyway, don't you?
I don't think he was being funny. I think he was commenting on the hypocritical nature of a lot of readers.
You could turn to your deposition at page 212, line 25. Page 212, line 25. All right, Mr. Dent, didn't you give the following answer to the following questions under oath? But in this headline, Mr. Delario tells his readers to go ahead and watch it anyway. Do you know why he did that? Your answer, I think he's being funny. I think that meaning is relatively transparent. I don't think I can translate it. Wasn't that your answer?
I think he was being funny and he was making a point at the same time.
You don't regret publishing this video, do you, sir?
The excerpts, no.
And you're proud of the piece, aren't you?
I think it stands up to the test of time, yes.
You gave no consideration as to whether the publication of the Delario posting, including the excerpts from the video, would be embarrassing to Mr. Bolea, did you?
I felt he was a public figure.
That's not what I asked you, man. I asked you whether you gave any consideration as to whether the publication of that pornography would embarrass this man, and you didn't, did you?
I think doing the job of a journalist would be unbearable if one was always to put oneself in the shoes of a subject.
Right, but we're not talking about a mayor smoking crack here, are we, Mr. Denny?
No, we're talking about a world-famous celebrity.
Having sex in a private bedroom with a friend, right?
With a friend, with the husband watching, yes.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, you never gave any consideration as to whether the publication of this posting would be upsetting to Mr. Bolea, did you?
No, we didn't.
Had you known for certain that Mr. Bolea would have suffered emotional distress as a result of this, you still would have posted it, right?
Probably, yes.
Pull up 49. Do you remember getting this cease and desist letter from David Houston?
Yes.
Yeah. You didn't find it persuasive enough to compel you to pull this video off?
We passed it to legal, considered it, and yes, I didn't find it persuasive.
Yeah. No further questions, Judge.